Welcome to Blackbriar Gaming. Today, I want to look at a resource that's been kicking around the Facebooks and the Discords. It is essentially a guide to legions and their Legio allies. That is, the titans that walk besides the Legiones Astartes. Now, this is very relevant for Legions Imperialis. We're getting some Warhounds. Yep, got that right. I think Titans in the core box, so everyone's got these Titans coming in, and as they're painting up their legions, they need to know how to paint up their Legios. Now, of course, you can do them in whatever color you want, that is, those Titans. Don't feel the need to be gate-kept and only go with a lore, 30k historical specific faction or Titan Legio. Do what you want, right? But for those that do like to go heavy with the lore and match their color schemes and their army list choices to lore specific battles and the actual army lists and army formations that would occur in those kind of historical battles. This video is for you, and I think a lot of people do. A lot of people are super keen on that. A lot of people have been asking the questions, which Titans would go with this Astartes Legion, and today we can kind of have a look and answer that question. So this is a guide that was put up, and I don't know who it was put up by on Facebook, but they themselves has credited Lewis, Mr. Lumen himself, who has done a super helpful thing. So it's not a complete list. In particular, Beta-Garmon isn't covered in any detail here, but of course, Beta-Garmon was so huge that you could get away with including almost any Titan Legion, kind of. But I'm going to have a look at that after this as well to do the, talk about the main Titan Legions that were at Beta-Garmon and that you might want to include with the Legions that were also there, and we can discuss that as well. So we'll go through them. We'll probably go through it by Legio as opposed to Legion because there's a lot of double ups here. So if we start with Graphicus, let's just jump into it. So working with the Dark Angels, fighting alongside them in the Rangdang Xenocides. Now, of course, the Rangdang Xenocides, like many of the battles that we'll see in this list here, were before the Heresy. And I'm not going to get all of these right. I'm not a epic, huge Horus Heresy lore expert, nor am I a Titan expert, but I'll do my best. But I can tell you that the Rangdang Xenocides, that the Dark Angels, and I believe the Space Wolves, yep, there we go, were involved in, happened long before the, not long before, but before the Heresy kicked off, right? So if you want to run Graphicus with the Dark Angels, it might not be as appropriate in a Heresy setting. So that's kind of what we're discussing today, right? So what would make sense from a Heresy perspective for the Dark Angels to be working with? So you've got the Ember Wolves, you've got Ignatum. Now the Ember Wolves there, that's kind of pre-Heresy Audax. That was their title there. You certainly wouldn't want to run them with Ember Wolves post-Heresy. These are the things people need to understand. But here's a great example, Ataris on Barbarous. So when the Dark Angels taking the war to the Death Guard, they are fighting along the Ataris Legio. So with that in mind, if you wanted to do a Dark Angels Heresy army, it would be most appropriate to paint up, and this is Legions Imperialis Heresy army, of course, it would be most appropriate with those Warhounds that you get in the core box to paint them up in Ataris colors. So this is how we get there. Now, let's look at the Emperor's Children. So it's kicking off at Isvan, and I will assume then that all of the battles that go from there are post-Heresy. I believe they've put them in order of kind of pre-Heresy to post-Heresy if they've started listing pre-Heresy battles. And there's not that many pre-Heresy battles actually throughout this list. But for Emperor's Children, you can really go in whatever direction you want. Now, it may come down to where you want to theme your Emperor's Children Legions Imperialis army. Do you want to make them absolute degenerates? And it's a little hard to convert at this stage, but you get a bit crazy with the tank, I guess, or at least with the color schemes. Have they degenerated into their Slaneshi worship? If so, Isvan 3 might not be the way to go from that perspective with the Titan Legios that you ally them with. But for the Emperor's Children, you could get away with most. So we're looking at Mortis, which is our most famous traitor Legio, Titan Legio. Very predominant at the Beta-Garmon campaign, the second phase, that is. But they were actually held in reserve by Horus for really smashing through at the end there during the Beta-Garmon campaign. So for those mid-Heresy battles, maybe not as appropriate to use Mortis as they were being held in reserve by Horus himself. But for the Emperor's Children, Mortis, Audax, which is the evolution of the Emberwolves there, and Audax is a really good one because they were famous for using a lot of Warhound Titans in packs to take down larger enemy Titans. So for your Warhounds, going Audax for Emperor's Children would make a lot of sense. You've got Vulpa, Mortis throughout other campaigns, the Drop Site Massacre being a great one there, and I'd love to see some Drop Site Massacre action being played out with this game. It's the perfect setting for it. Furions, which are a great color scheme, and I think would actually go fantastically with Emperor's Children. I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well. The Furions are that really bright yellow scheme, which offsets the purple just beautifully, and accented by the gold as well. We get back into Mortis, Magna, and Tempestus later in the Horus Heresy and at the Siege of Terra there as well. So if you're doing them around a Siege of Terra force and you were looking at doing those kind of campaigns, building an army for that specific campaigns, you'd be looking at Mortis, Magna, and Tempestus as opposed to Furions there. So that's the Emperor's Children. Going into the Iron Warriors. So at the Drop Site Massacre, Mortis is going to be there for the Drop Site Massacre for all of the legions that were present, which is most of the traitor legions. But they also did the Talon campaign, which would be a really great one to do if you were theming your Solar Auxilia around more malicious style and wanted to do a Talon campaign. That'd be really cool. Furions, yep. Same kind of stuff here. All those Siege of Terra Legios that we mentioned before, Mortis, Magna, Tempestus. We get into then Lesser Damantine and Battle of Tlan. Yep, Argentum and Krytos. Krytos? Yeah, that'll work. Now, the Iron Warriors Loyalists on Paramar 5, they were fighting with Graphicus. So if you want to mix it up, and the Iron Warriors are the only example there we have of a flipped legion, because there were so many Loyalists kicking around that weren't brought up in the Heresy for the traders. So they're fighting with Graphicus in that particular campaign. Now going on to the White Scars, they only really kick in at the Siege of Terra. They didn't have, I believe, a Titan contingent, and according to this list, in those early Trondax days when they were taking on the Alpha Legion, and then on their journey, which was mostly space-bound towards Terra over those early Heresy years. So at the Siege of Terra, from a Loyalist perspective, you're looking at Ignatum, Astrum, Defensor, and Graphicus. Now, if we look at those colors, let's check them out. What would really nicely go with the White Scars? So something that would nicely offset the white. I think Ignatum would be an absolutely fantastic choice there. That really red scheme, I think, goes well with the red accents on the White Scars, and would look really cool. That darker kind of red would stand out nicely in amongst the sea of white. Now, on Molech, they're fighting alongside the Crucius, the Fortidus, and the Graphicus Legios. Moving on to Space Wolves. Space Wolves are a tricky one. They didn't have a huge part in the Heresy in a lot of ways because they were so beaten up at Prospero, but to Prospero, they took the Mortis Legio. That is were they loyal at this stage? We don't really know. Essentially, Horus sent a bunch of forces to back up the Vulca Fenrica to take out the Thousand Suns, all part of his plan, and he sent some Mortis engines along with them. Now, it says Loyalists here. We're pretty sure the nature of those Mortis engines was not overly loyal, but certainly there's kind of a pre-Heresy Loyalist scheme for Mortis, and then a post-Heresy scheme, and I'd go with the pre-Heresy scheme here for Mortis, so more of that, I think it's kind of dark blue and yellow accents, as opposed to kind of that bluish grey and red, so if you wanted to get some Space Wolves down there, and you wanted to do a full Prospero campaign, which would just be so epic and amazing and doable, I would go with the pre-Heresy Mortis colors, that blue and those yellow, for the Titans fighting alongside the Space Wolves. Now going to the Imperial Fists, they're just on Terra, right? For the most part, they got in Beta-Garmon a little as well, so it would make sense to put the Imperial Fists with those Legios for Beta-Garmon, and look, we'll talk about that now, because the Imperial Fists in particular, that's most of their choices, unless we're talking about the Siege of Terra. So if we're getting into Beta-Garmon, there's a lot of Legios you can get involved. From a Loyalist perspective, the ones you're mostly looking at are Asterum, Defensor, Solaria, Ataris, and Osidax. Osidax? So those are the main Loyalist legions that you want to look at. From a traitor perspective for Beta-Garmon, you'd be looking at Mortis near the end of the Beta-Garmon campaign. You'd be looking at Furians, Vulpa, Krytos, and the Fire Masters. What's the proper Legio for the Fire Masters? It has absolutely escaped me. See if I can track it down while I'm talking about it. I can't. What is it? Legio? Nah, it's lost me. I'll see if I can pick it up as we go. Oh, actually, I'll be able to find it through my other. Here we go. The Sutervora Legio, who then became the Fire Masters as they delved into their traitor ways. So those are your main Beta-Garmon Legios. In regards to allying legions with them, the main legions from a traitor perspective, you could get away with most of the traitor legions. The main ones, however, being the Sons of Horus, of course. Then you're also looking at the Iron Warriors, the Word Bearers, and the Emperor's Children. Those were the main legions involved in the later campaigns for Beta-Garmon. Early campaigns, you could get the Alpha Legion in there as well, and it does note on that in their entry. In regards to the Loyalists, those fighting against aside Graphicus, Osidex, Solaria, Astra, Mataris, and Defensor. The main legions there, you're looking at Blood Angels, White Scars, Imperial Fists, and Salamanders. Quite a heavy Salamander contingent, because those that remained were drawn to Beta-Garmon in the early campaign years. So Salamanders, that would be your way to go there. So that's Beta-Garmon. Those are legions involved, those are legios involved. We'll move on. So Imperial Fists, besides being at Beta-Garmon, they were, of course, there for the Siege of Terra, and we've got those classic Siege of Terra Legios, Ignatum, Astrum, Defensor, Graphicus. Night Lords. Night Lords have some cool little inclusions here. So Thramus fighting against the Dark Angels. You've got the Ulricon. The Ulricon Legio. Let's check out their colors. Maybe I couldn't find them. That's one of the ones we don't know. So look, if you want, and here's a cool opportunity, if you want to create your own Legio, there are a few that we don't actually have color schemes for. Ulricon, there we go, one of them. So if you're going with Night Lords, you get to just make up whatever Legio you want in whatever colors you want, and still be lore adjacent as you rock some Ulricon Legio action. Now, the Siege of Terra, they're there with your traitor Siege of Terra, Legios, Mortis, Magna, Tempestus, but also at the Shihugal Purge, which I know nothing about, but geez, it sounds cool. We've got the only mention of Volcanum 1 and 2, and I love the 1 and the 2 piece. I don't really know what that's about, but it's kind of cool. So we've got some color schemes for them. It's kind of that dark grey piece. But in regards to what I'd probably run with Night Lords, you want something that actually is a bit brighter, I think, because you're going to have a lot of dark blue with the Night Lords with that dark red kind of accents. So let's have a look what might work nicely with them. Let's look at Tempestus. I think Tempestus, it's that brighter blue, kind of that light grey. That might work really nicely with the Night Lords. Magna as well, you've got that bright orange color that could go really well against the dark blue. So there we go. If I was running Night Lords, I'd probably go with the Magna Legio. Moving on to the Blood Angels, you've got Siege of Terra and Moloch. I don't think, we've looked at Moloch, same as the White Scars, right? They're running the same kind of Legios. Which one would I run? Let's look at colors. Probably not Ignatum, like I would with the White Scars, because the red will just get lost in the red of your Blood Angels. Astrum could be really nice, something really different, that blue and that yellow, depending if you're going on some yellow accents with your Blood Angels, with that second edition kind of vibe. Let's look at Defensor. Defensor, probably not. I don't think that white, green, and grey, that dark black, if you will, it's a bit busy, I think, to be running across red as well. You'd want Defensor going across maybe the White Scars, where that white links it in a little. For Blood Angels, we've got Graphicus. Let's have a look at them. No, not so much. The Grand Yellow, I don't love it. So, yeah, if I was going with Blood Angels, I would probably go which one was it? Was it the Astorum? Yeah, Astorum. That's what I'd go. I think they'd look really, really cool against some Blood Angels for some Siege of Terror action there. Moving on to Iron Hands. Now, Iron Hands, they've got a few in here, which is surprising, noting how messed up they got at the Drop Site Massacre. So at the Drop Site Massacre, they had a Taurus with them, which is fantastic. Great choice, I think, to offset the Iron Hands here. That white or that kind of cream color with red will stand out beautifully and give you a really different color scheme amongst all that black. The Asterum as well, just fine. We were talking about them for the Blood Angels. Not as much. I don't love them as much with the Iron Hands. I think the cream and the red looks better. And then finally, Ataris again. So that's their main Legio that they had working with them. So there you go. So Iron Hands probably want to run Ataris alongside them. Going to look great on Warhounds as well. Now, Worldeaters. Worldeaters went pretty nuts here. So they've got access to a Voltarum, and there you go. Oh no, Voltarum's different to Volcanum. My mistake. Let's look at the Voltarum. Yeah, beautiful. Kind of that cream and black. That would look. It could work. I'm not overly excited though. Let's keep going. We've got the Kitty. This is for the Rangdang Xenocides too, by the way. So this is pre-Heresy. The Kitianos. Do we have a color scheme for them, or were they one of the ones we couldn't find? I think they were one of the ones we couldn't find. So once again, if you wanted to get creative with your own Legio, Worldeaters are a great choice as allies here because you can color them any way you want. But it is pre-Heresy. But you can always make your own lore for this and say that they hung around and were carried into the Heresy as well. They weren't necessarily all destroyed at the Xenocides, the Rangdan Xenocides, and they didn't necessarily return to Mars or move on to a different legion. We don't know. Mortis, classic. Yep, Drop Site Massacre, and at Isvan, fantastic, and at the Siege of Terror as well. So Isvan 3, and that is the purging of their own legions. So you've got Mortis, Audax, and Vulpar. And this is potentially the first time I've talked about Vulpar, which is that red and black scheme. Just fantastic, really dark. I think that'd work a lot better if your Worldeaters, you're going towards a white and red scheme as opposed to a white and blue scheme. The Audax, that kind of dark red mottled effect, that could look really nice alongside them. Mortis, they get a bit wild during the Heresy and go into some pretty Demon Legion action, but the grey and the red there could work really nicely as well. So plenty of options for the Worldeaters depending on where you want to set them. Are we talking early Heresy at the Massacre and Isvan 3, or are we talking late Heresy with nothing kind of in between on this list? Moving on to the Ultramarines. So Ultramarines on Calth and those early campaigns in Calth, we're looking at Honorum. Let's check out Honorum. So they are the bright red. Love that. That's going to look fantastic against all the blue of the Ultramarines. Yeah, look, that's probably the route I'd be going down. The Presagius. Jeez. They've got that blue and that white. So look, if you wanted to have more of a linked-in color scheme with all of the blue of your Ultramarines, this is actually a really nice choice. You don't always want to have something that looks completely different to what your legions are doing, and while it doesn't make sense to color your Titans in Ultramarine colors, this is a way you kind of get to do it and kind of get to cheat a little while saying it is lore adjacent and Legio specific as opposed to just blue for Ultramarines and Titans doing the same thing. Because don't do that, people. Do not color your Titans in Legion, Astartes colors. Look, you can if you really want to. Go nuts. You do you. They're your tiny miniatures, but I would not. And then Oberon. Oberon being that kind of, it's like not checkered, triangles? What was the Jags, maybe? That grey triangle kind of theme over orange. It's going to be tricky to paint, firstly. That would be an absolute effort, and I don't think it would look fantastic against Ultramarines. So I'd be going Honorum for something that really contrasts beautifully, or Presagius for the Ultramarines there. They also fought with a bunch of other Legios throughout the Heresy, the Lysander, the Ataris, the Crucius, the Fortidus, and the Graphonicus. So we've looked at some of those. I'm interested, have we got a color scheme for the Lysander? We do. They're white, pretty much all white with dark grey or black checks. That could look really nice as well for your Ultramarines. So there's another fantastic choice from a color perspective for a Legio to work with them. Now, going into the Death Guard, apparently the Death Guard just fought with all the Legios on the traitor side and just had an absolutely amazing time doing so. So if you were wanting to go Titan heavy in your ally section for your Legion's Imperialis army list, then Death Guard might make an excellent Legion choice. So the Voltarum there are really nice. They've got that kind of cream and black color scheme, which works in well with the cream and green of the Death Guard. You've got the Kitianos. I think we talked about them just before. They don't have a color scheme, so you can make that one up if you wanted to. Get creative. You've got Mortis, you've got Audax, you've got Vulpar, you've got Tempestus. Very nice. I don't think all of those go as well as the Voltarum. They're my winners at the moment. That is Rangdan Xenocide, right? Dang it. And they don't make an appearance later on, and I'm not sure why. It might be, did they stick on the loyalist side? I don't know. I can't see it in this list called out. So yeah, maybe not appropriate for Heresy. I take it back. I take it all back. Let's look at Tempestus. That could be a win. So that's the grey and the blue. Oh, I don't love that. Blue and green never go nicely together. Red and green and cream. Red and green are another colours that I generally try and avoid just because it starts to look a little Christmassy. So Audax might be out from that perspective. Same with Vulpa. They're red and black. Who are we going to put with these guys? Maybe Mortis. Maybe Mortis is the answer here as they go, oh no, it's the red as well, isn't it? Can we find a Legio to hang out with Death Guard that are not red? Let's look at the interfactor. Oh, they're black with dark red trim. It's not looking good. It might have to go, right? They might have to get a little bit Christmassy if they want to go down that route. Vulcanum. Here we go. So Vulcanum is just that dark grey kind of scheme with gold trim for the Death Guard. I think that could work really nicely. It gives them a really grim, dark appearance, and that kind of goes with the Death Guard nicely, especially if you're really getting some battle damage on them. That'd link in really great. So there we go. So if I was going to go Death Guard from a color scheme perspective, if I wanted to be very lore specific, I wouldn't get the Voltarum in there because that's pre-Heresy. I'd go with the Vulcanum Legio instead. Now, the Thousand Suns, they only really have access to one Legio. That is the Zestobiax, which I just love. I am so into this Legio. I actually have a couple of Titans painted up in this scheme. I was early on days when Titanicus came out, I was going to get into it, and this was the Legio that I was going to go with. The purple and white is just so unique, and it just looks so nice. So if you're running Thousand Suns, these are probably the guys that you're running with them. Noting, of course, that it's only Prospero. You could then justify running Thousand Suns with any of the Siege of Terra Legios. That's absolutely fine. They were present, although not in huge numbers. They were definitely there. So either Zestobiax, or if you look at those Traitor Siege of Terra, you've got Mortis, Magna, Tempestus. But when you get the chance to run Zestobiax, the name alone is worth it. But that color scheme is so beautiful. That's definitely how I'd be going for Thousand Suns. Now, the Sons of Horus. Geez, there's a lot. Alright, so they can go ham, right? They can pretty much get access to most of those Traitor Legios. It's just really where you want to base your Legion at the time. Are you going early Heresy? Are you going Siege of Terra? That will define it. But Mortis are the classic when it comes to Sons of Horus. They were Horus's favored Titan Legio, so that would make sense, and I'd go down that direction. Pretty simple for the Sons of Horus. Now, the word bearers, we've got some interesting ones in here. The Saturvora, which is the ones that I was talking about before, that turn into, I think, is it the Fire Masters or whatever? Yep, that sounds about right. But their scheme is so cool. It's that kind of dark grey with the flames. Amazing, what fun. And those flames, of course, match beautifully with the word bearers, as their symbol is the burning of books. So I don't think you can get much better than some Legio Certivora action for the word bearers. And that color scheme is going to offset beautifully against all that dark red. The Furians would be fine as well, that yellow action, and I think they even have some flame kind of motives as well. They certainly do. So they're the yellow with the grey flames. Another great choice for the word bearers. I'd be going down that direction for them. But if you did want to get creative, we've got the Excruciatus, and I'm pretty sure we don't have a color scheme for them. Please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, and I will mess some of this up. But if you want to get creative and do your own Legio, there's another opportunity right there with the word bearers. Salamanders. So they were, of course, the Ataris was there at the Drop Site Massacre alongside them as well. I don't love it. Once again, anything with red, I try to avoid matching with green, so I probably wouldn't go Ataris. Astorum is a choice, but blue, yellow, green, it's a lot of colors. And then you've got the Ignis. Now, I'm pretty sure Ignis do we not have them? I'm surprised we don't have Ignis. I've definitely heard of those before. Let me do some research while I'm at it. You're going to hear some keys typing here. We're doing it on the run. Legio Ignis. Do we have a color scheme for them? No, it doesn't look it. But they are known as the Fire Kings. That's cool. They fought against the Salamanders in the Compliance of Karatan in the Great Crusade. So that is pre-Heresy. I'm glad we looked that up. So not necessarily appropriate for Heresy action. You could argue maybe they stuck around with the Salamanders, but maybe they didn't because they would have all got destroyed at the drop site massacre unless they linked up afterwards. Who can say? Make your own lore. Get creative. Have some fun with it. So if you wanted to have a very flame-style Legio, just like the Furians and the I'm never going to get this right, Certivora's Legios that we were talking about before, a great opportunity there would be to do up your own scheme for the Salamanders with the Ignis, and saying they met up with them later in the Heresy from old allegiances that they had carrying on. And then we come on to the Ravengard. So the Ravengard, of course, part of the drop site massacre as well. They're there with the Taurus. Isvan 3. That's interesting. Is that separate to the drop site massacre? I don't know what the lore is there. I mean, drop site massacre was Isvan 5, right? I do always get these mixed up. So let's just double check while we're at it. Drop site massacre. I got it wrong in one of my previous videos. Someone did correct me. It was Isvan 5. There we go. I finally got that right. With a Ravengard on Isvan 3, watching the purge of those traitor legions, maybe that's cool. It would make a lot of sense. They're pretty sneaky, but how would they have known about it? Because anyway, I'm gonna have to look up that lore because that's really interesting to me. I don't think they'd be there with Legios. That wouldn't make sense. Anyway, it might be a mistake in the list. I'm going to check out that lore at another time. But if you're running Ravengard, it would make the most sense to run them with the Tarum. Ataris, I should say. They've got the cream, they've got the red. I think that'll work really nicely with Ravengard. Does it make a lot of sense outside of drop site massacre armies? Not really. I'm guessing the Ataris, I'd have to look into the lore, but I'm assuming they were absolutely destroyed at that drop site massacre. So outside of that particular battle, and then the ongoing, I guess, campaign that occurred, the guerrilla warfare, which the Legio probably wasn't involved in anyway. Guerrilla warfare with the Titans, pretty hard. You can maybe get away with it with some Warhounds, but outside of drop site massacre, probably wouldn't run Ravengard with Titans. Also because of their rules and the way they work, with getting so far up the board with their either their scout moves or their infiltrate. So I'd probably skip the Titans when it came to them. But if you really wanted to run some Warhounds with them, I'd justify it, them being part of a guerrilla campaign with the Ravengard, carrying on Isvan 5, post the massacre. Geez, you get creative. I'd then maybe camouflage them a little. So take them, maybe have those cream and those reds showing through a little, but have done a bit of a camouflage over the top. I think that would be really cool. There's a cool idea. Do it. Someone do it and post it and show me. And then we come, lastly, to Alpha Legion. So you've got the Rangdan Xenocides here. They were involved. Sneaky Alpha Legion doing sneaky things. Of course they were. I remember the meeting, actually reading around the meeting of Alpharius. Was it Alpharius? Who can say? And the Lions. That's really interesting there. But when it comes to other Legios that you could run them with outside of Rangdan Xenocide, which was, of course, pre-Heresy, you've got Furians, and I think Furians would look fantastic to offset that metallic kind of teal of the Alpha Legion. The Furians with the bright yellow would look great. You've got the Krytos at Beta-Garmon. Now, you'll see Beta-Garmon's included here. That's because it was early Beta-Garmon. So Beta-Garmon can be divided into a number of different campaigns. If we're talking Alpha Legion, we're talking early. And that Krytos scheme is that kind of sea green with a bit of white, which would look absolutely beautiful alongside the Alpha Legion. Wouldn't necessarily contrast, but you don't always want to. So Krytos, another great choice to go with Alpha Legion, probably the one that I would go with myself. Now, the Nerf campaign, I believe, was pre-Heresy with the Xerxes Legio there, and we don't have Xerxio's color scheme, I don't think, either. So pre-Heresy, if you're looking at that, and you would get to make up your own Legio color scheme. But Krytos or Furians would be my pick for the Alpha Legion. And there we go. So I didn't do it by Legio, like I said I originally would. In the end, it was easier to go Legion by Legion, even though there's so much double up. Go nuts, really. You can write any kind of lore you want. I would stick to either Loyalist or Traitor Legios as we know them. But of course, some of the Legios, and there was one particular, was it Tempestus in particular, that was divided between the Traitors and the Loyalists, where they kind of split. It might have been another one. Maybe it wasn't Tempestus. Either way, there were cases where the Legios did go both ways, both Loyalist and Traitor. So if you wanted to run, a Furion scheme with your Imperial Fist just because you love yellow on yellow with some black flames in there, go nuts. You do you, right? And talk to the lore about it. Put some Loyalist stuff on them and come up with your own amazing lore around how you've got some Loyalist Titans that have split off from their Legio in shame. Get creative, right? Have fun with it. But if you do want to stick to the lore as it exists, this is a great breakdown to give you an idea on how to paint those Warhounds within your core box and other Titans as we start to get our hands on them to match the Legion that you want to run. Thank you so much for watching today. Hopefully I've informed your Titan paint schemes and your lore for your army. Make sure to keep rolling those dice and getting hyped for Heresy.